hard to see it.
Yeah.
All right.
So here it is. Let me just give you a little tour. So here, you can't really see them, but you got the disk drive right here. That's where you put CDs in.
Ooh, retro.
Yeah.
That
sound. So, yeah, dude, this CD reader is like $20. So
nice.
yeah, I mean, it's nice to have in case you want to install like drivers and stuff. Because the way it works is you got the motherboard, right? Which this motherboard is ridiculous. So you got the motherboard, and then everything on top of it, that's what you start putting stuff on. So you've got, obviously you got the CPU, and the CPU central processor processes everything, like all the data.
Which one's the CPU?
Right here.
Okay.
So right here, the reason why we've got this is because when you have a computer or you have any type of like processor, it's going to generate heat, and the CPU will always generate the most heat inside the case. It always will, because it's always doing operations. It's always doing something. It's the central processor unit. Everything flows through it, in and out. So what you want to do is when it gets hot, the best way to expel the heat is okay, so let me just slow down for a second. So I have a water cooled build. So there's two ways to cool a CPU. You either pass water over it, like you put water, literally you have a cooler that you mount on top of it, and you pass cold water over it and it heats up that water, and then you pass it along and it just flows off across it.
And it cools it back?
It cools it, it literally comes through here. So what it does is I've got a radiator mounted on top of here. Yeah, you can't.
It's a
You
fucking
can't see it.
radiator?
You can't see it right here, but it's up here. It's mounted. It's a fucking radiator.
Holy fuck.
It's an actual. Actually, I can take this off and show you.
Holy fuck.
I'll take this off.
And you telling me this is not your best setup?
I mean, this is
in the living room?
well. Okay, this is better technically than the other one. It's just specifically for gaming. So it has like an Intel. It just has a regular processor. This is just the beast. This is a stupid rig.
It's a monster.
This is literally a monster rig that like no one in their right mind would ever build. My friends were telling me to like stop. Like, Will, you're wasting your money. And I'm like, no, I want to do this. I have to do this. I want to do this.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can remove.
Ooh, that's the fucking radiator,
So yeah.
motherfucker.
So I have so I'm on the radiator. So the way the airflow in the case works is I've got a huge fan on the front right here.
What's this LED right here?
That's for the power button.
Oh, okay.
Just unplug this bullshit. So the way that airflow case in the case works is you take in air in the front, and so it's got this big old fan that's just running constantly.
So you have two fans.
Yeah, so I got one fan on here, it pulls it through, and then it pushes it this direction, and then that just pulls it out. But I don't really need them all that much because the fan, okay, sorry, there's four fans. There's these two right here. So these are pulling, I think it pulls air.
Oh, okay, right here.
I don't know which direction it's going. I think it's pulling it this way. So it's getting all the hot air out of the case.
Okay. Yeah.
So you want to have inflow and you want to get it out. So this one isn't really as important because the CPU, the heat is all going to be in the radiator. Like it's moved away from the CPU. So that's not as big of a deal. So that's the way I have my setup right now, and it was very easy. This cooler, this is all super easy. This was already put together. The hardest part was mounting the CPU on the motherboard and putting the cooler on there and putting the CPU is sitting there on the motherboard like this, and then you have to put thermal paste on there because when it generates heat, you need to be able to you want to be able to transfer that heat from, this is called a heat sink. This plastic thing, well, it's not actually plastic, there's metal, it's really thick, you can't really see it.
Can I touch it?
Yeah. So, you see back.
It almost feels like glass.
Yeah, it's because it's like plexiglass, because this is just like an aesthetic thing. It's just, this is just a front cover that has LEDs and stuff on it. But if you look all the way back here, you see where it says like close and all that?
Oh, yeah.
That is like making direct it's a metal plate. There's a metal plate in here, and this liquid is going basically like, it's like a little reservoir, and that metal plate is transferring heat between the CPU and the plate, and in between that you have to have thermal paste because that paste, you're basically putting two pieces of metal next to each other like this. I don't know what I just dropped, but basically when you put two pieces of metal, they're not going to be like 100% direct contact. Like it might look like
that.
It might look like it's smooth, but if you pulled it up and like put like some liquid in between it, it wouldn't be 100% making contact. Like
there's some type of like space between
that
them.
Heat convection isn't 100%. So what you do is you get this stuff called thermal paste, and it looks like toothpaste.
Yeah.
It's like grease. It's thermal grease, whatever you want to call it. And you put a little bit on there, and when you put the heat sink on there, which is this whole little unit here, you literally just like put it down there, and it just like spreads out, and it covers all those little micro cracks, and it tries to get all the heat from the CPU.
So kind of like glue.
Yeah. So basically, that's what it is. So I have this build, and it's water cooled. My other build is air cooled. So it's the same concept, just getting heat away, and it's just whatever you want. Is like, do you want it cooled? Like, honestly, air cooling is the easiest way to do it, because you just throw the cooler on there, and that's it, and you're done. But this is like, oh fuck, dude, he's got the fucking
The fan.
oh fucking radiator, like what? Like, of course, oh dude, like and like I can download software on here that fucking like, when I play music, it'll make this fucking pulse to the music. It'll literally like, it's fucking stupid.
Dude.
Like, I don't even do that because it's just ridiculous. But like all the cable management, like it took me hours just managing the cables.
Okay.
So
Make it look pretty.
yeah, like I usually just throw them in there, but I spent probably
So
like 5 hours.
this is the CPU, and then this is the RAM right here.
Yep.
So you have 2 RAM memories.
Yep.
2 8 gig. I'm assuming.
Yep. I didn't even know that this could have 256 gigs of RAM, because I didn't realize just how ridiculous this build was when I did it. So here's a graphics processor. So if you see, I have the HDMI plugged in the back of that. And then,
This is a graphics card, right?
yeah, this is the graphics card. And you just slides into the motherboard. It's very simple. CPU, like, building a computer is like Legos, because it's all you got to think about is power, data. That's it. So like, where's power and where's my data? So like, if you look right here, this huge cable right there, that's giving power to the motherboard. This cable up here, that's giving power to the CPU. These two up here, and then down here, these are all just data.
What is that 40? I meant to ask.
So that right there is really cool. It's a 7-segment display. It looks like an alarm clock.
Yep.
And so when you get the motherboard, when you try to turn it on, people are like, "Oh shit! Like, it's not working." It's a debugger, and it has like numbers, and it tells you like, "Oh, your RAM's not seated, or your CPU's not plugged in, or it's not powering on." It'll tell you what's wrong. Yeah, this is a really $high motherboard. Yeah.
Fucking.
But some motherboards will have like, I had a motherboard that had 4 LEDs, and it was just like, whatever corner was lit up was like, that's your problem.
This is fucking art, dude.
And then it's not hard, dude. It's really easy.
Not art.
Oh, I thought you said hard. I was like, this is easy. But some, it's really cool. There's a speaker you can plug in. It's a motherboard speaker, and if there's a problem, it'll beep. It's just like beep beep, like it's not working, and you're like, oh shit, and then you go and fix the problem.
Yeah.
So if you know what you're doing, chances are when you boot it up, it'll work first time.
Is that the prime on the left is part of the cooling system?
No,
or
that's
what's
actually part of just the back panel with like the I/O. Like I have like USB-C ports and all the ports back here.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great.
So one thing to note, it's if you have an Intel build, this is a little bit more high, like a little bit more deep understanding. But if you have a Intel build, Intel has their own integrated graphics. So like, for example, when you get a motherboard and it's an Intel motherboard, there's an HDMI port on there because Intel renders their own graphics. Like they have their own onboard GPU essentially. Like it's a tiny, like it's its own GPU. And it's not very powerful, but it's enough to like obviously run YouTube, power your shit up, and you can use a monitor. AMD on the other hand, they have 0 video processing. Everything you do is on the graphics card.
And how do you tell the computer use this, not the other one? Like
That's just the way the motherboards are set up.
Oh, okay.
The motherboards will only you have AMD motherboards essentially, and you have Intel motherboards. It knows. Like once you put the CPU in, it knows. Like you can only use that CPU for that type of motherboard. Okay. So it won't